Okay, I had some trouble with my drive-by-wire. Basically with the car stalling when you come to a stop. Now, what had happened was G4X ECU and G4 Plus do their idle control differently, like back to front. So we're just going to talk about G4 Plus, but essentially on G4X you have large numbers in this base position table, and then in the bottom row of the ETHROTTLE table you might have a 1 and then the rest is 0. For G4 Plus you have I'll show you the numbers, but basically you have most of your duty in here in the ETHROTTLE target table, and then your idle base position table only has small numbers, and in fact this was what I ended up with here. So what I did was I got the original tune, so let's just say this is the original tune I was working off, right? This is the one that I just did that I've corrected. I took a photo of what was in this row up here, ETHROTTLE target 1. I then went to my idle settings. I took a photo of this base position table. Any steps that are implemented, so fan, power steering, neutral, and then the AC step table. And then once I had photos of that, I can set them to 0 to start from the beginning. So what we did was, and that's why I had that other file up, just close that. So this file here, so what I did was, I'll just zero out this table with one hand. Nope, can't do it with one hand. Okay, so what I did was, I zeroed out the idle base position table, engine fan step 0, power steering step 0, neutral park step 0, AC step table, I know that's 0, but we'll go in here. I set all that to 0, but make sure you have a copy of the original tune file saved, and when you zero these out, save them as something different, so you're not editing your original file, okay? Always have a backup. So what I've done is I've zeroed all these out, blah, 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 zeroed that out, and then zeroed out the first row here, okay? One thing I also needed to do was I need to turn this onto open loop. So we'll go open loop ETHROTTLE. Okay, now we're starting from scratch, all right? So hop in your car, start it, and right now the throttle is closed. It won't start, okay? Oh, also turn on your logging. So go logging, record, and in fact there's a couple of parameters that you need to watch. They're in this idle table. Let me close this. They're in this idle table already, but I just changed them. So what I changed them to, I'll open up a log file so we can actually see. Okay, so the values that you want is engine speed. Wait, why is idle target up there? Okay, give me one sec. Here, this is probably easier to see it. All right, so I just need to add a group. Move up, move up, move up, move up, and I'll put my idle target here. Okay, hang on. This is wrong. Probably shouldn't have closed that other file. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to do this again. All right, so what we need to do is we need to set up this logging thing with all the stuff we need. So what we want, I guess you can watch how I do this. So our idle target, we don't need map. What do we want? ETHROTTLE base targets. Don't need idle position. We don't need idle ignition control. And we don't need idle status. What we do need, however, is, and I'll add it to this one, ISC offset. Okay. Base targets, E. Let me just have a look. I'll just save that and then I'll just go have a look over here. So, okay, TP. I've got it all set up in here. Okay, here we go. I'll open this so you can see. We'll get rid of motor duty cycle. We'll put this down here. ETHROTTLE base targets, that can go up there with the throttle position. ETHROTTLE base target, no, hang on, that's got to go down there. Move down, move down, move down. And let's just move this down. Okay, hang on, and I just need to move up, remove, and I think I've got everything. Okay, so set up this table like this. What I'm gonna do is, I'll show you. Okay, so you want engine speed, then in the next group, you want, we don't need sub, so we'll remove that. So we want TP main and ETHROTTLE target in a group together, and then we want the base target and the ISC offset. Yep, and then you don't really need this, but we'll put the closed loop trim down here. You can use that for later when you go back to closed loop. So that's what you need, right? Set those up in a graph like this for your logging. And here's the thing, right? Base target is what's in this table for G4 Plus, right? Base target is what's in this first row of this table, okay? ISC offset is all of these steps added together, okay? So if you have values in the AC step and your AC is on, if you have a value in your engine temp, so say I have 0.5 engine, 0.5 fan, and I have 0.5 in my AC and let's just say I have 0.5 in my power steering, right? So 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 0.5 is 1.5. The ISC offset, sorry, the ISC offset is those steps added together, so it would be 1.5 because there's 3 set at 0.5. The base target is this number, sorry, I made a mistake, added to this number, okay? Your idle base position table. So the biggest thing to remember for G4 Plus is the big numbers go in the ETHROTTLE target table and the small number goes in the idle base position. And G4X is back to front. So your larger numbers go in the base position table, which makes more sense to me. And then any adjustments go in this table. But we're talking about G4 Plus. So what you do now is we've got our log running and we try and start the engine. So if we have a look here, I tried to start the engine and it would run and then it would stall. So you can see from the engine speed up here, this is where we tried to kick, didn't start. Tried to kick, didn't start. And then come to here and it kicked and it started. So the way I got it to start was ETHROTTLE target, I put, oh, it's too hard to do with one hand. I put a number 3. So I put 3%. So that's the throttle blade opening 3%. And it started. Okay, so 3%. But see how it's wavy? Okay, what the engine was doing was revving up and going down, revving up and going down, revving up and going down. What that means is it's got enough to open, but it's not got enough throttle opening to be stable. Okay, so if we move along to the graph to here, we have a look. I then set it to 4. Okay, so just in this area, so the pink cross is showing you where it's idling. So my idle was set to 900. It's set to 900 normally, but it on cold start it starts at 1200 and it makes its way down. Okay, so you're basically working in sort of this area, right? So what I found was, probably can't do this with one hand again, so please excuse me. So because it was oscillating, I went, okay, in that small area, I'm going to make it 4. Okay, so here, and then this was the point where I went, okay, I'll try 4. Boom, cleaned up the oscillating. Okay, so let's keep going along. Just see. Now, this whole time, we don't have coolant temp on here. No. Okay, so I'm just going to add, this is one other thing you need to add, is coolant temp. So ECT. And you'll understand why in a minute. Okay, here's the coolant temp. So that was at 30 degrees. And remember, this is it's an open loop, so the ECU is not making any corrections. And basically, what we're trying to do is find the values for this table here, and then also for our idle table here. So I put in 3. Did I put in 4? No, I put in 3, and then I changed the first 3 to 4 because escape. Yeah, okay, sorry. Changed the first 3 to 4 to get the more stable idle. And then I quickly came back to my idle page here. And actually I had this graph set up how I have this other one on the ETHROTTLE table page. And so we're at 30 degrees. Let's just see. Okay, I'm just having a look. Yeah, okay, just here, I think. Oh, I can't remember what I did. Anyway, okay, so now that we've got a rough number in here, right? I started with 3, had to bump it up to 4. Then you need to switch to this idle base position table, because this is temperatures, okay? 0 degrees, 10 degrees, 30 degrees, 40, 50, 60, 70, right up to operating temperature, okay? And the engine will start at around 30 degrees, okay? Now, what happened was, if I go to my thing here and I go down to 30 degrees where it started, see, it was quite a, did it become quite erratic? No, that's right. I think the idle, okay, so it was idling along, and then what I'm watching is, on this page, I'm watching this. So this is my idle target and the engine speed. If the engine speed is above slightly, then that's okay. But if it's wanting 900 RPM and it's doing 1100, there's a value somewhere that's way too big. So remember I said the this eThrottle, TP main and eThrottle target percentage is these two added together. So your base position is the idle table plus the base position, and then offset is those steps added together. All our steps are off, so we don't need to worry about that. So essentially what we're doing is we're trying to make the first row of this plus this base position table so that the engine will idle at the speed that we want it to. Okay, that's basically it. If it's idling too much, the throttle's too open. So at this point, what did it do? I think I tried 2 just here. No, did I? What happened? Yeah, I don't know. For some reason... Yeah, look, I can't remember what I did. But essentially, if we have a look here, see ISC offset 0.6, and then we have a look at the temperature. This was at 40. So I think, yeah, so look, okay. We wanted 3.8 to get it to idle. The base target was 3.2. We added 0.6 to it to get 3.8. And it was idling. That's why they had the idle targets. You can actually, yeah, anyway. So basically we've got 3 here, and what I started with was I went right at 40 degrees, I want 0.6, boom. Let me just, yeah, okay. So I went 0.6, and what we're doing is, as the engine's warming up, we need to fill in these values so that the idle is slightly above our idle target, and not below, and not way too high. So anyway, I filled in these. So usually what happens is these values go down. So I actually think I started at 30 degrees, and I think I started with 0.8, then 0.6, and I think to 0.4, and I'm watching the engine speed. If I say punched in, I don't know, 0.6 here, the idle speed would jump up too high. So I'm just going to reduce it, and you can come back and do this. You might have to do this a couple of times because, of course, when an engine heats up, it takes forever for it to cool back down. So a couple of mornings you might have to start the engine, allow it to warm up, and just check these values, looking at your log that you've taken and what it takes to idle and your values here. So we're filling out. So we're filling out this table as the engine warms up, and it needs less and less and less. So 0.3, I think it needed 0.3 here. And then it got to one of these points, and then the engine just started to rev really, really high. So what that meant was that this number here, see if I can see it on the graph. Yeah, well, okay, it was at this point here. So I had my 0.6. What do we have? Yeah, okay. Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. I should have probably recorded this as I did it and explained what I was doing. But essentially, it got to a point where it jumped right up, and you can see here that there's 4.6, which would have been 4 base target. No, it would have been 4.6 base target, and I've actually reduced it by 1 here. So what I did was 4 was too high, and I reduced that to 3. And then, because the rest of this graph was all still 0 across here, what I did was I filled out the rest of this graph with 3, because we know that 3 base target plus whatever we end up with in our idle base position will allow us to idle, okay? So what I did was I got my 0.8, and I got my 0.3, and then I went extrapolate right, and then I went extrapolate left. Actually, I just did extrapolate left, so I'll go extrapolate left, because we actually got up to this is operating temperature here, you know, 93 degrees kind of thing. And this is kind of what I ended up with. So sort of 0.8, 0.6, 0.4, 0.3, 0.3, 0, 0, 0, 0, with 4, 4, and then 3 in the rest of it. But every engine combination is different, okay? So now that I've got it to idle around my target at operating temperature and in open loop, what we need to do then is turn on closed loop, and then continue logging, and then we adjust the engine fan step, AC step, etc. Now, because the engine was already tuned, I actually just referred back to my photos and I just punched in engine fan step was 0.5 and the AC step table, it was something like 0.8 to 0.4. Now it's not completely finished because I need to continue testing it, but that is how the G4 Plus idle control drive-by-wire throttle, that's how you do it from scratch. So what I need to do now is make sure you save your log, because you can go back into your log and you can look right at what temperature. So let me get this to focus. So I'm almost at 70 degrees. Okay, I'm at 70 degrees. To allow it to idle, it wanted 3.9. Well, yeah, is it oscillating? Yeah, so it's actually too high. See, so it's doing 3.9. It's got 3.7 base target. So it must have been halfway between this cell being 4 and this cell being 3. And I think that's when I reduced that cell to 3. But yeah, this plus this should equal this, and the biggest value should be in your base target, which is the bottom row of this, and that idle, what do they call it? Idle base position table. Okay, those two add up, that's your base target. And then the ISC offset are those steps added together, okay? And you do that last. So if you want to look at what is going on, set up your graph like this, RPM. These two should pretty much match. That's where your throttle is and what your throttle is targeting. So right now the throttle was targeting 3.9, but it was only open 3.3. But remember, it adjusts itself because it's running off a PID algorithm. And then you've got your coolant temperature here. So as it heats up, you can check what duty it needed to idle at that RPM. I hope that makes sense. I'm sure it will if you're trying to sort of figure this out, because the missing link is where did it get this ISC offset from? And thankfully Adam from Link explained that it's the steps added together. Alrighty? So you just don't want, when you turn on closed loop, see this closed loop trim? That's why I kept that, because you don't want this pulling like 2% or 3%. That means that one or some of your values are way too high, okay? Your ISC closed loop trim should only be pulling a very small percentage, 0.2, 0.3, maybe 0.5, something like that. So I hope that made sense, and I hope it helps you. If it does, let me know below. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help. And thanks for watching. Oh, also click subscribe because it helps other people find the videos.